Let's give just one more minute for folks to join. In the meantime, if you feel like introducing yourself in the chat, please feel free to tell us about yourself, where you're from, where you're joining us from, what the weather is like, how your sessions are going for OER camp so far. I know I've had a great time. Oliver, good to see you. Glad you can make the session. Hey. I believe you have a session later on today as well, right?
That is correct, yeah.
What time is it at?
Time-wise, for me, it would be 8 o'clock in the evening, but slot 31.
31.
Yes,
Okay,
time
wonderful.
zone-wise, that's probably the best answer.
Yeah. Anybody who's interested in H5P, I definitely recommend you check out Oliver's.
It'll just be my consultation hour, so if there are any questions, I'll answer them, but I don't have like the pre-planned program.
Yeah. Still, lots of brain power in that one, so definitely look forward to that session. Hi, Lucas, Amanda, Alan, good to see you all. Some friendly faces, some friendly names here. Hello, Esther. Hello, Melanie. Let's just go ahead and get started. Please feel free to continue in the chat, but we'll just jump into it. This session is kind of like an ask me anything / demo / just let's have a chat and talk about stuff. I'm going to be talking about open source OER platforms that I have built using Drupal with H5P. Also give a demo of something that we're releasing open source, and I think it will be a lot of fun. Just a couple of notes. I'm going to throw these links into the chat. I've set up a Google Doc for shared note-taking if you like. And I also have a quick survey form, if you don't mind, as I do my own introduction, if you fill that out, just so we know who you folks are as well. So a little bit about me. My name is Yasin Dahi, YMDAHI on Twitter. I'm not very active there, but once in a while I do post some stuff, so feel free to follow there. I'm coming to you from Waterloo, Ontario, which is in Canada. I'm the founder and lead developer at Learnful.io. I'm also the senior product manager at libretext.org. I've been doing edtech and open source for about 10 years, give or take. And this is kind of my hobby, my passion, and all that interesting stuff. So bit blessed to be able to do something that I enjoy doing every day, which is build edtech for higher ed. You can reach me at any time, Ydahi, YDAHI at learnful.io. I did mention earlier here that there's a survey. Please, let's actually take a look at some of the responses so we get a sense of who everybody is. Feel free to continue posting those responses. So just give a couple seconds there. The questions are, I am an educator, a designer, a developer, administrator, and so on. What sort of line of work are you in? How much, I have some or much experience with Pressbooks, H5P, Drupal, WordPress. Select all that apply here. I am familiar with or know of H5P Studio at eCampus, Ontario. I've heard about perhaps H5P Creator at Wilfrid Laurier University, the H5P Kitchen at BC Campus, or Libre Studio at LibreText. Select any of those that apply. And my goals for this session today, I want to learn more about Drupal so I can build my own sites. Perhaps I want to learn more about H5P and how it works with Drupal. Perhaps I want to learn about the open source OER tools being presented today. And perhaps I want to build an H5P studio for myself or for my school. Maybe that's my reason here. So let's take a look here. We'll do a reload. So it's very evenly split. with developers and educators and some advisors, researchers, librarians, administrators. So this is wonderful. We have a really good kind of mix of folks coming from different points of view. So we should perhaps have a really good discussion on these topics. In terms of some of the tech that I'm familiar with, some of us know about Pressbooks. More than half of us know about Pressbooks. Most of us know about H5P, of course. It's grown like wildfire recently. A few of us know about Drupal, so that's wonderful. And of course, we pretty much all know about WordPress because it is that ubiquitous. It is kind of like a family name at this point, or household name, I should say. In terms of what we're familiar with some of the H5P studios, as you will, that are out there, some of us know about H5P Studio at eCampus. Some of us have heard about the Wilfrid Laurier H5P creator. Most of us have heard about the H5P Kitchen. Obviously, Alan, the BC campus folks have done a wonderful job there. And only a few of us have heard about Libre Studio. So that's wonderful. This is very, very new. So it will be a chance to kind of learn about that as well. In terms of what our goals are today, we want to learn about Drupal so we can build our own. Some of us want that. Half of us want to know how H5P and Drupal work together. So we'll be covering that. Most of us just want to learn about the open source tools that are presented today. And that's wonderful because that's kind of, that makes my life easier. It's just a demo at that point, which is wonderful. And how do I get an H5P studio for my school? Some of us are interested in that as well. Okay. It's a good mix. So let's get into it then. We'll start with the basics. What is Drupal? First, you should know it's been around for a while. Back in 2001, a gentleman by the name of Dries Bouchard from, I believe, Belgium, created a content management system for his dormitory. As kind of these open source projects go, right? It was built for a very specific use. It caught on like wildfire, and it's become one of the most popular content management systems out there in the world today. It's a free and open source content management framework, so it's a bit different from a content management system. We'll get into the difference of framework and system shortly. Not to say that Drupal isn't a CMS as well, but most Drupal developers will tell you it's a content management framework, a CMF. Drupal powers 2% of the web and 13% of the top 10,000 websites in the world. Odds are your university, your government agencies, what have you, odds are that they are using Drupal in some form or fashion. I can pretty much guarantee you that they are using that if you were to check under the hood in some capacity at least. Drupal is known for its developer community more than almost anything. There are 1.3 million Drupal developers registered for Drupal.org. As of this month, there are 120,000 active contributors to the Drupal project. These are developers who are, volunteering their time, their code, what have you, to essentially improve upon Drupal. In fact, Drupal has one of the largest developer community bases of any open source project, and that of course includes Linux as well, which is pretty amazing. Let's talk about Drupal modules and plugins and themes as well, real quick. There are 46,000 plus free modules and 29,000 plus free themes. If you're familiar with WordPress, as most of you are, you might be familiar with the freemium model for plugins and themes. This doesn't exist in Drupal. There is no such thing as a freemium model for modules and plugins and themes and stuff like that. If a module is made available freely, openly, it is, and all these 46,000 modules are, you get the entirety of the functionality. There isn't a pay to expand sort of option there. Which is a breath of fresh air as a developer for me, because I've grown a little bit tired of the freemium model, to be completely honest. Real quick also here, 1,300 plus free distributions. Drupal has this really interesting concept. It's related to the concept of it being a content management framework and not a content management system. a distribution of Drupal, and that's kind of what we're going to be demoing today. This OER Studio, this open source thing that we're tool that we're building with Drupal. It's a distribution, and there are many of these distributions that do really interesting stuff. I'll actually just open this link real quick. If you're looking for an e-commerce site, you just download, you can download one of these distributions. Panoply, there's an LMS, there's a intranet tool. There's all these different sort of tools that are called distributions in Drupal that combine a bunch of functionality, theming, etc., to build you, to provide you a kind of turnkey solution for what as very specific app or site that you're trying to build. And that's going to be important because that's what essentially what we are trying to build as well with OER Studio. So just real quick here, and by the way, guys, I'm looking at the chat here. If I miss something, please feel free to just turn on your mic and just say your comment out loud if there's anything, if you have a question or anything like that. It's the chat is a bit difficult to follow while you're presenting as well. Very quick, this concept of system versus framework. If you were to ask a Drupal developer, hey, I want to build a website, what should I use? That Drupal developer will most likely tell you that you should use WordPress. Because you're asking them, I need a content management system, right? I want to build a website. They're going to recommend a content management system like WordPress. Whereas if you ask the same Drupal developer, hey, I want to build something like WordPress, a CMS, and the content can be anything from OER to 3D models to music to videos. I want to build a CMS. Where should I begin? They're most likely going to tell you to use Drupal. And this is the kind of argument that most Drupal developers make. If you want a website, use WordPress. If you want a WordPress, use Drupal. And now, not to say that that doesn't kind of work in both ways. You can use WordPress to build really custom distributions that do really amazing things. Pressbooks is a fantastic example of that actually occurring. And you can also use Drupal to build websites as well. I've done that personally lots and lots of times. So it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a general kind of rule of thumb for anybody who's learning about Drupal for the first time and wants to compare it to WordPress. So is Drupal that useful? It is. Let me show you. What I'll be demoing today is called OER Studio. But before I get into what OER Studio is, I have to tell you a little about Learnful.ca because it kind of wraps that whole discussion. So Learnful.ca, what is it? It's an ongoing OER project built with Drupal. It's a free and open platform for educators, designers, students, researchers to share, remix, collaborate, and build modular OER and open communities. The modular aspect and the open communities aspect, building those two things with Drupal is where the kind of the magic happens, if you will. So with that, I just wanted to give a quick little demo here because I think it will probably make a lot of sense where to understand where OER Studio is coming from. So I've just logged into my account on Learnful.ca. You can register freely. There's no issues there. I'll get my dashboard where I can see all the resources I've created and so on and so forth. In terms of the resource I can create currently, I can create H5P. I can create what we call lessons. I can create what we call modules. Let's just go ahead and take a look at each one of these within Learnful to see what they are. Let's find some H5P here that's been shared openly in the library. I believe there's an interesting one, yeah, right here, animal cell structure. So this is just an H5P, not too different from probably what you've are used to seeing. But what we do is we wrap the H5P with our own functionality and metadata. So you get information about the actual H5P. You can like or bookmark. You can see who the author is. You can view their portfolio. If they've decided to share other OER within their portfolio, you'll be able to see it there. including a bio, their links. You can contact this author if you like, and so on and so forth. Within Learnful, the author can also add a collaborator. You can see their portfolio or profile here. A collaborator actually has access to edit the resource that they're added onto. You'll see information about the license, any metadata provided. There's an ability to have a discussion, so post comments. You can also report your adaptation of the OER if you use it somewhere, or if you download it, modify it in some way, make a remix of it. So that's H5P. Let's take a look at lessons real quick. And let's find one with the keyword cell. A lesson is essentially a web page, a single web page that you can construct using a number of blocks. We can see the content. Instead of H5P, we have a number of blocks. They can be text, image, columns, interactive content, which in this case is H5P. And again, we have the comments and the adaptations that we can list. We can see the portfolio or the profile of the author, any collaborators that are listed, tags that are used, the license for this content, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to click on Student View here. This will launch the web page that has been built using the blocks. So this is the presentation layer, if you will, for this content. And you'll notice that it just generates a good looking page, right? Instead of all the blocks kind of put together like this, it combines all the blocks with a little bit of styling to create a page that can have images, text, H5P that you've sourced or you created yourself, information about the resource itself, ways you can share it, and so on and so forth. Lastly, just real quick to run through this example, let's click on module. We're going to search for modules that are available. And modules work in the same way, excuse me, modules work in the same way that perhaps a mini textbook would work. To create a module, you just combine whatever resources you want, including H5P resources or lessons, web pages, to create into your table of contents to create essentially a playlist or a table of contents for each of those content. You also notice that, again, we have all the wrapping metadata here, the author, collaborators, license, commenting, so on and so forth. Let's take a look. And here we can see that in the table of contents, we have a lesson by, oops, didn't mean to click there, by this author, another lesson by this author, an H5P by this user, and another lesson by this user. And so when we click on the student view for this module, we'll get the landing page for the module, a description, a little bit of a title header there. And we get the table of contents that we can then just flip through as if it was a mini book of sorts. So here's one lesson, another lesson. Then we have the H5P. You can also navigate from here. And we can just go back to the module homepage. Now, the neat thing is when we're creating these resources, they're all modular. So I can create H5P, and this is my short form OER, if you will. And then from there, I can create lessons, which include content text-wise, images, videos, embed code, or H5P that I've sourced from other places. And then from there, I can create modules which combine my lessons and or my H5P in a table of contents. The neat thing is you can have an entire lesson that's, that includes text that you've created with modules with H5P that other people have created, and so on and so forth. And actually, let's just go ahead and take a look at what this authoring experience looks like. So I'm going to add a text block. Let's put in some lorem ipsum. Next, I will add a H5P resource. I will select H5P resources. I can see my H5P that I've created. I can see H5P that I've bookmarked. So this could be H5P created by other users or even myself. Or I can do a quick search for H5P and just select the H5P that I want to include there. And I can continue adding other text blocks and so on and so forth. I'll just give this a quick title. Obviously, we can provide a license, Creative Commons license. We can search and add collaborators. We can display this resource, this lesson in the catalog or in our portfolio. We can continue to add metadata and so on and so forth. I'll just leave all this as a default and click on create the page. And that's my lesson. And so now when I want to share this lesson with my students, I just share this URL. And anytime I make updates to the lesson, I don't have to reshare the URL or anything like that. And one real quick thing here, just because I forgot to mention it before, you'll notice that I can also browse remixes that have been shared. So remix, if I find a lesson here, we are able to quickly remix it and build it for ourselves and create a copy of it for ourselves so that we can make any sort of edits that we want to it. So here we have a lesson with the title Functions and Function Notation. We can see all the different blocks that go into making this page. We can see the author, any collaborators, the license, and so on and so forth. We'll just click on the remix button. It's going to tell us that we're remixing this page by this author. These are the blocks that are coming in. We can start to change the title. The cover image, we can change the license. It automatically brings in the attribute of where we're the source of where we're creating this remix from. We're not going to share it in the portfolio. We'll just keep everything else the same. I'm just going to hit the create remix button. And now we have that same content. We have a copy of that content in that state that we are able to remix for ourselves or to edit and essentially make it our own within the context of what we want. So we can, change the H5P that's used, swap out our own H5P if you like, change the text, and so on and so forth. So anyway, that was just a quick dive in, and I'm not here to demo Learnful mostly. Quick dive into what Learnful can do, or what are the sort of tools that I was building with Learnful. You also notice here real quick in workspaces, we can do all the same things that we're just doing in there, except within a group, so within a domain. So if I was interested in health sciences and I want to create OER, I can create a group or a workspace that other educators can join. And then there we can have our private discussions with planning and so on. We can create labs. And then within those labs, we can create, share, remix, and review H5P as kind of like a group, a working group of sorts. Lastly, once we are done with our labs, once we've created and shared and reviewed our content, we can create collections that essentially have that curated set of H5P content or lessons or modules that we can make available and discoverable. So instead of just an H5P element somewhere, we can create a collection that's been curated and developed by a community of sorts. One interesting thing to note here, the idea of workspaces is that we also want to allow educators to work with their students to provide them a workspace where they can all kind of collaborate, organize, plan, share, remix, and review OER that they create, including H5P lessons and modules. All right, back to the presentation. So I started building Learnful about, I'm going to say about 5 years ago. It's transformed in lots of different ways. What did I learn from building Learnful? I realized that simplicity is a lot, in terms of your average educator, they'd rather have simplicity over functionality. Even still, though, they would rather have functionality over experimentation. So they want something simple and they don't really have time to experiment, to test out different ideas, and to learn. I'm not going to say a new system, but like and we all know that collaboration is a vital part of OER, but to provide them a brand new system that does that, it's difficult to get folks on board with that. Lastly, what I learned is that educators, they need stability, and having Learnful.ca, even though it's supported by lots of various organizations, institutions, they'd rather, from what I understand, have it hosted on their own university servers so they can control um, uh, what it looks like, how it functions, when it updates, et cetera, et cetera. And that's completely understandable. And these lessons learned essentially led me to build OER Studio. So what is OER Studio? It's a free and open source platform built on Drupal and made available as a Drupal distribution. It allows you to create a community for sharing and creating OER. Currently, users can author H5P and collections. And we're working on adding web pages like lessons, modules, quizzes, video series, and other sorts of content that users can author. OER Studio is a small portion of Learnful.ca, specifically the authoring of H5P and the sharing of H5P, pulled out of Learnful.ca and put into a different package. The first time I did this was at Laurier when I built the H5P creator. You can see that in action here. That site was then also copied for eCampus Ontario. And so we can see that in action here. Since then, obviously, eCampus has, the folks at eCampus have taken it upon themselves to continue expanding upon it. And more recently, I've taken that portion of from Learnful.ca and built LibreText, Libre Studio. And so this is the the most recent version of OER Studio, if you will, and that we built and customized for LibreTexts. Other things to note, it takes about 10 minutes to install OER Studio. It's a continuously improving project. It's built in partnership with LibreText, and it's built in consultation with the Learnful Advisory Board. And of course, it's open to it's open source, it's freely available, and so on and so forth. So let's go into a demo here. We're going to go to OER Studio, and I'm actually going to paste this link in the chat here for anybody. And I'll paste the registration code if you're interested in registering an account as well. So when you go to OER Studio, this is what you get. You'll notice that it's very similar to Libre Studio. It's because Libre Studio is built on OER Studio. So when you install OER Studio on your own servers, this is kind of what the starting page is. The idea is you're getting a blank canvas style-wise to essentially do what you would like with it. Of course, you can register using that registration code. I'm just going to log into my account here so we can test it out. Of course, it's not going to remember. And I don't remember my account either. Okay, that worked. Once I log in, I get my dashboard. From here, I can create new H5P. We have a question here. OER Studio is a Drupal distribution. How can I install it? Yeah, it is a Drupal distribution. I will demonstrate how to install it or where to find the source code just after this quick little demo. Amanda, thank you so much for joining in, and I look forward to connecting. So here we are. I can create new H5P, obviously. I can, as I create my H5P, I can select the domain or the category or the subject, if you will. I can add tags. I can add an overview. I can display this H5P in my profile. I can set it to private, so require login, or I can include it in the library as well. Let's just go ahead and create our first H5P element here. Let's go ahead and save that. So once I create H5P, this is my H5P page, if you will. I get information about, the domain, the license, what sort of H5P it is, when it was created, last updated, is it shared in the library, and then you also get information about the author. I can go into my dashboard and see this content as well in here. And of course, if I go into the library or the catalog, I can see that content shared here, along with the other H5P elements that have been created by other users and shared in the library. I can filter by content type. So maybe I just want to see all the presentations. Or I can filter by license. So perhaps I want to see only those that are available in a CC by or with the CC by attribution, and so on and so forth. When I go into an H5P element, I can see that element obviously in there. I can see who the author is. Can go into their profile. I can see any content they've shared in their profile. I can choose to contact this person if I'd like. I can also browse domains. So we have another question here from Alan. What will be the relationship to OER H5P OER Hub? Doesn't that come with H5P in Drupal? Yeah, so OER Hub by H5P, and I don't want to make any sort of assumptions on what direction that's taking, but that tool will be built into the editor. So instead of being able to just create and upload, I'll be able to also search for H5P. And I'll be able to search a global database, if you will, of H5P that's been shared into the OER Hub. And from there, instead of just creating something or uploading something, I'll be able to browse for specific OER and reuse it right inside the editor. The relationship that something like Studio will have with the OER Hub is that I will be able to, once it's available for Drupal 8 and 9, once it's available for Drupal 8 and 9, is that I will be able to share my content, my H5P that I've created in Studio, into the OER Hub as well. So hopefully that answers your question. We can use it already. Okay, it's available for Drupal 8. Oliver?
7 at least. I'm not
7,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's available for Drupal 7. And we do have, if you're interested, you can go to share.learnful.ca. And you can create an account here. Once you create an account, you can create new H5P, and we'll notice that we have there's the share button. And so from here, we can search for different content. We can see if it's, we can filter by, has it been reviewed? What's the level? What's the language? What's the license? I think we have a couple here on Learnful. I'm not going to be able to find it now, but for instance, this H5P element here, if I click onto it, I can see what it is, who it's by, and I can hit the Get Content button. Now, OER Hub is just basically going to download that H5P that's been shared in the hub, and it's going to be available for me to essentially remix at that point. So we'll give this a second to kind of spin up, and then we'll return back to that. Let's continue on here. So we have our library of content that your users can create. Users can also browse by domains. So we have the biology, business, whatever our domains that we've created ourselves within Drupal. We can also have the latest content that's shared by users show up here. And so if I wanted to learn more about the biologies in terms of like what's shared there, I can see all the content that's being shared within that section. I can also create and browse collections within Studio. A collection in Studio is basically just a playlist, if you will, or just any sort of list of H5P that's been created within the Studio. So for example, I can go into this collection. I can see that this collection, first and foremost, it's fun activities for biology. It has the subject of biology. It's created by this user, and they currently have 2 H5P elements that are shared in there. Let's go ahead and create our own collection. We'll give this a collection. We'll call this, I don't know, high school math quizzes. From there, I can also give it a description, but I'll just go ahead and I'll say I want to select my resources. And from here, I can see my resources, so resources I've created, or I can browse the library and search for resources that have been created by other educators. So I can see who the author of that is, what the tags are, what the subjects are, and again, I can kind of browse through what the what's shared with me. I can select the resources I want to include in my collection. Again, I can give my collection a tag. I can decide to include it in the library and share it on my profile. But what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and save this. And like this, I can just start to create a list of H5P. And what we do with that H5P can vary, right? Like we can do something similar to the way that modules work in Learnful. Whoops, I didn't want to go away from there. Oh no. The way that modules worked in Learnful, where we get that playlist where I can just hit next and it shows me the next H5P, next, and hit the next, shows me the next H5P, and so on. But yeah, it's really open in terms of what we can do there. We're about to run out of time, so let's just really quickly jump back into our session here, our presentation. OER Studio, how can I get it? Here's the GitHub URL. To install OER Studio, you just need a typical LAMP stack with PHP version 7.4 or higher. I wouldn't recommend PHP 8 yet, but 7.4, the latest version of 7.4 should be good enough. The list of PHP sorry. Somebody's not happy with the LAMP stack? Okay, that's fine. Neither am I. That's how I feel most of the time. In order to install WordPress or Drupal, they require PHP specifications, whether it's extensions or modules. So to install that, you're gonna need to enable certain extensions, not too dissimilar to WordPress. And for our repo here, we use OER Composer. So knowledge of how Composer works would be beneficial in your, not necessary, but beneficial for your own sanity, if you will. Okay, I'm gonna mute you, bud. Doesn't look like I can, unfortunate. Warning, this is a pre-release alpha, so there might be breaking changes. So don't use it in production just yet, but we are going to get there hopefully very, very quickly. Regarding that, we do have a roadmap that we're putting together in terms of what we're going to focus on the next, year or so. If it's something that you like to take part of, it's something like you like to take part of, please email me and I'll add you to the advisory group for the roadmap. In terms of next steps, send me your feedback, your comments, your questions, and to ydahi@learnful.io. Follow, message me on Twitter, whatever it is. Just get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to chat. We're putting together 2 groups: the roadmap advisory and the early adopters or testers group. We're going to do a live installation tutorial in the coming weeks. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I would recommend letting me know. And just follow for updates on Twitter at Learnful Labs or at ymdahi. Thank you so much. I apologize for going quickly on some of these slides, but I realized 45 minutes isn't a whole lot of time just now. So Any questions, I'll stick around and more than happy to, I'll be around in the conference as well. So anything that you'd like to talk about, please feel free to get in touch. Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear. Any questions? Anybody want to talk about anything? Melanie, yeah, I'm so glad you created the Learnful account. Yeah, please feel free to poke around there. It's a labor of love, Learnful.ca. So the more people using it, the better. Thanks for joining, Luke. I appreciate it. And of course, don't forget to miss Oliver's next section, which is in, let's just pull it up here.
It's in about 2 hours.
In 2 hours time, yes. Especially if you're interested in H5P, which I think we all are. And Oliver is kind of like the master of H5P. So we'll be able to give him all our problems and he will solve them immediately or else.
Well, speaking of problems, what were your problems with H5P? Did you have any?
With H5P, I think the biggest problem and the one thing that people always kind of ask me about, oh, there's the warning, is that how do I migrate my content? So even with something, sorry, go ahead.
No, common question, but there's no good solution. So
yeah. And with something like OER Studio, where you're providing it for perhaps a bunch of your instructors or your or entire organization, or maybe just a department, and they might have H5P scattered throughout different places. The common question comes up: well, how do I move it all into one place? And or from if I created a Pressbook book and then move that.
Yeah, well, actually, there is one solution, but it's not public, so I can share it.
Please share it. Yeah.
No, I can't. I'm not allowed
you can't
to.
share it. Oh.
No, it has been, and I didn't create it, but I'm consulting for a company, and they have also it's Drupal because it's so versatile. So they have built their platform, and they have created. It's not really batch import, but all the functions are there too. You could download or you could create a zip file with all the H5Ps that you want to upload, and you could use that to upload it to a Drupal system. I'm not allowed to share the code.
Okay,
but it's doable. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, that does. That at least gives me hope that it's something that's within the realm of possibility. So
well, the functions are there in the Drupal plugin, so there are functions up, and you just have to hook into them, and then I don't know how much I can say.
Yeah.
So that's at least for Drupal. So, but it shouldn't. Yeah. It shouldn't be the problem is that you would either have to put it into the plugin itself, into the core.
Yeah.
But still the plugins would have to, all the plugins would have to be touched because they need the front end. And I think the H5P core tree team, they are still a little understaffed.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I mean, it's just grown so popular in the last, 3-4 years. So I imagine it's difficult to keep up with all the demand.
Yep. Pardon, I didn't want to to steal your session.
Not at all. We only have about 2 minutes. If there's any other questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all in the other sessions.